I like to make an interactive meeting. The important thing is that we focus on whatever are your major concerns. As I hit those topics, and we'll elaborate on them. Please change the slide. Advance the slide, please. Okay, so senior timeline. Hopefully this is what you're seeing on your computer. Friday begins.
I don't see anything at all.
Tomorrow's a key date because that's when the financial aid forms go live. Now, I'm sure amongst the audience, we have senior parents, mostly going to be talking to the senior parents as of this year's date. Next year, the junior parents, it will be October 1st in 2022. Sophomore parents, it'll be October 1st in 2023 and so on. So Friday, the Fafsa goes live. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Fafsa. It is the free application for federal student aid. The Fafsa is a required financial aid form at all 4,800 colleges and universities throughout the United States. Though it goes live on October 1st, it's not majorly important that you get it completed during the month of October. My best recommendation is you submit the Fafsa at least by December 1st. So there's one other form, and it's on the slide. It's called the Css Profile. Only 10% of the schools, about 10%, will ask for that additional form. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But the most important point that I would see, or the most important date that I'm going to show on this slide, is the one in red, May 1st. That's decision day. Put that in the back of your mind, because I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the show. Next slide. So tonight, what we'll talk about, federal student aid. Federal student aid is money that is given by the federal government. And I will tell you, it's very hard to come by. Federal student aid is very limited as far as the amount of money that they give away. The biggest grant is called the Pell Grant, just under $7,000. In order for someone to qualify, or for a family to qualify for the Pell Grant, they're going to have an adjusted gross income of under $30,000 to get the maximum amount of money. Slightly higher than that, you will get a partial Pell Grant. So you understand that the federal government only gives money away toward higher education based on financial need. There are state grants also available. The tuition aid grant, we'll talk about that a little bit later. In order to qualify for a state of New Jersey grant, your son or daughter is going to have to attend a college or university in the state of New Jersey. It does not have to be a state school. Merit financial aid, that's the biggest bang for your buck. That's where most of the money comes from. I'm going to elaborate extensively on that. And then, of course, scholarships from other sources, and the tax benefits. Tax benefits that a person or a family might qualify based on their income being below the phase-out number. Phase-out number on the adjusted gross income for married filing joint begins at $162,000 and disappears at $182,000. Don't worry about those. Your accountant really needs to be more concerned than us. Let's go to the next slide. A little bit about me. I am a certified financial planner. I'm also an accredited fiduciary for investment purposes. I have 3 kids, all finished with college. My oldest, Danielle, went to Drexel University in Philadelphia. My daughter, Alyssa, Ithaca College in upstate New York, and my son went to Penn College of Technology in Pennsylvania. None of them in the state of New Jersey, so we did not even become eligible for consideration for the state of New Jersey. So financial aid, who gets it? How much will they get, and how do you apply? Let's go to the next slide. Well, first of all, it involves financial aid grants. Grants are free money. Does not have to be paid back. There is work study. Work study is a federal program. When you fill out the FAFSA, it's going to ask you a question. Would you like to apply for work study? I always recommend you say yes. Work study is the opportunity to interview for jobs on campus, and you can get paid minimum wage, or your son or daughter will be paid minimum wage. If they elect to take that job, they can interview for as many jobs as they want, and they can only decide, or it's totally up to them to decide which jobs they want to accept. Obviously, you wouldn't want to work in the cafeteria. too busy. My daughter Danielle worked in the computer lab, and when someone put their hand up because their paper wouldn't print, she would add paper to the printer. The rest of the time she was studying and getting paid. Not a bad deal. Loans, everyone thinks about loans as a way they're going to pay for college. I like to avoid them whenever possible. And then, of course, we talk again about merit aid. And we're going to, as I said, really elaborate on that because that's where the money comes from. Next slide. The financial aid form. The financial aid form that you're all going to be dealing with, senior parents, come Friday or over the weekend or during the month of October, is the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. The FAFSA can be accessed by fafsa.gov or fafsa.ed.gov. Just an observation. I Googled FAFSA the other day just to see what would happen. I got 5,800,000 hits. The point that I'm making here is that if you wind up on the wrong website, you're going to provide personal information about yourself, your name, your address, your social security number, your date of birth, and so on and so forth, and your tax info to a website where you have no idea where it's going. So make sure that you carefully take note, fafsa.gov or fafsa.ed.gov. I'll show you what the page looks like when you load. Go to the next slide. So FAFSA application right now is about 106, 108 questions. It's going to change. The FAFSA changes every single year, but there is a major overhaul coming next year. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is going to change next year. They're going to reduce the number of questions from 108 this year down to about 35, 36 next year. And most of it is going to be populated directly from the IRS website, making the FAFSA a lot easier to work with. But before you begin the FAFSA, and hopefully none of the senior parents have started working on the FAFSA because you're working on last year's. I did a presentation at Malwa High School last night. Someone approached me after my talk, and they told me they completed and submitted the FAFSA earlier in the week. Well, it was last year's FAFSA, and they're going to have to start all over. Not the end of the world, but you can't begin until Friday, October 1st. Before you start the FAFSA, you're going to need to obtain an ID and a password. fsaid.ed.gov. Hopefully you see it on your screen. It's also a website that you carefully want to write down accurately and make sure that you wind up on that website. Parents, you're going to need an ID and a password. Not both parents, just one of the two parents. Then you're also going to need an ID and a password for the student. So when you go to fsaid.ed.gov, I'd like you to sit down with your son or daughter sitting next to you in front of the computer. And I'll tell you why. As you begin to fill out the application, flip the page, please. Flip 2 pages. Go one more to the page that says Federal Student Aid, proud sponsor of the American Mind. This is what the Fsa Id main page looks like. And if you notice the 2 tabs below the paragraphs, create an Fsa Id as the default. When you begin to fill this out, putting your email address, that becomes your verified email, and it can only be used once. So with your son or daughter next to you, I would advise that you start with them first. Let your son or daughter put their email address in, confirm it, start with a username. It's a name that you can select. Usernames can be your email address. It can be any combination of letters and words. It can even be your mobile telephone number. They will ask for that later. So there's actually 3 ways to sign into the FAFSA. Pick a username, write it down, pick a password, make sure you write it down carefully. You'll go through a series of questions, and in the process of filling out this ID and password form, you're going to receive an email to the email address that was provided. So if your son or daughter is doing it first, they'll receive the email. There's going to be a 6-digit numerical secure code. And before you finish this application, you're going to have to enter that secure code to prove that you are who you say you are. It times out after about 10 minutes. So that's why I want them sitting next to you until they complete and submit the application for the ID and password. They'll take off, and then parents, you take over. Start the process again. Get to the fsaid.ed.gov website. It defaults to the create an FSA ID. Parents, you now enter your email address. One quick story. If the parent was doing it for the student, and if the parent entered his or her email address, the parent's email address, and went through the application and then attempted to create an ID for themselves using the same email address, you'll get a note that will say, sorry, this email address has already been used. So it's important that you make sure that you complete the application and that it's an email address that the student will have at least for the next 4 years. So if they have a high school email address, don't use it. Next slide. Once you have your FSA ID and password, you can then begin the FAFSA, but again, not till tomorrow. Fafsa.gov or fafsa.ed.gov. This is the landing page you're going to wind up with. You're going to click on Start Here. Next page. It's going to ask you if you are the student, you are the parent, or you are a preparer. I always suggest you just click on I am the student. And you understand that the FAFSA is intended for the student to prepare. And it predominantly deals with the student's information. But let's face it, most of the time, it's the parent who's going to complete it. So parents, when you get to this page, click on I am the student, and you begin the FAFSA. Next page. You're going to log in. It even will ask you if you have not yet created an ID and a password, this gives you the link to do so. But if you have one, or what you should for the student, you're going to enter on the next page, the student's ID and password, and it will give you this landing page. Now again, these forms change every year, and this is drastically different from how it looked last year. So if there are parents in the audience that have older students who have already begun college, and you filled out the FAFSA last year, you're seeing a whole new look to the way this thing appears. Now you notice this is the 21-22, because the 22-23, the one you'll be working on, is not available again till tomorrow. But it's going to take you through social security number, first name, last name, date of birth, and so on and so forth. You'll hit the continue button, and as you advance through the application and answer those questions, it's going to save your work. So you're not going to lose any of the work should you have to take a phone call or walk away or get frustrated with how it's working out. You can come back and pick up where you left off. Next page.
I have a question.
Sure.
Why have two accounts? Why have the student account and the parent account, and then the parent goes in as a student?
So let me answer that question by kind of stating this. The student's ID and password is available for the purpose of completing the FAFSA. The parent's ID and password is intended not to complete the FAFSA, but to sign off on the FAFSA in the final submission, and also use the data retrieval tool, which will populate the FAFSA with the parent's 2020 tax return. Senior parents, they're looking for your 2020 tax return. It's called prior, because it is 2 years prior to when your son or daughter will begin college. Senior parents, your students will be starting college in the fall of 2022, and they're looking at the 2020 tax information to determine how much financial aid you might qualify for. So again, don't sign into the FAFSA, parents, using your ID and password. It is a student form. You have to sign into the FAFSA using the student's ID and password, and you're completing the FAFSA as the student. Parents, you're only using your ID and password for those two reasons: data retrieval tool and final sign-off.
And that you do comes afterwards?
That comes afterwards, and I think I have a slide that'll show you that. But the parents will have to enter their ID and password before you can submit it.
Ms. Klein, I think you had your hand up before. Did you have a question?
No.
All right, like I said, just keep raising your hand and we'll try to, we'll hold off the question till the end of the slide before we move on to the next, and I'll keep an eye on that.
It's important that you ask your questions while we're on a particular topic, because it's important that you really get a full understanding of what you're doing. The Fafsa is not really that completed. You can probably get it done within a half an hour, barring any mistakes. Keep in mind that if you do make a mistake and you submit it, you can always go back later and edit the Fafsa and correct your errors. Okay, go to the next slide. You should see a blue circle and a green circle. This is your dashboard. This is the page that shows you what your standing is after you've submitted the Fafsa. So there's many tools provided that will allow you to maneuver in and out of different pages to gather different bits of information that you might need. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, what we're looking at is the 21-22 Fafsa. This is the welcome page. If you notice right below my Fafsa, welcome Carson. Application status, and I can't read it. Let me just see if I can expand it. Application status, process successful. So what we're looking at here, Carson has successfully submitted her Fafsa for last year. She started college a few weeks ago, I guess in the fall of 21, because this is the 21-22 Fafsa. Congratulations, your form was successfully processed, and it gives you bits of information. It gives you the opportunity to update your school information. If you've decided to apply to additional schools that were not listed the first time you submitted it, you can go back, as I said, you can edit it. Look at the second box down. Edit Fafsa form. Suppose for a moment things have changed since you've edited the Fafsa, or suppose you've reviewed the student aid report and you find a mistake. You know you want to get it corrected as quickly as possible. So keep in mind, there's always the opportunity to correct any mistakes that you may have made. Mistakes do often occur, and if you don't correct them quickly, it can be costly. It can deny you financial aid. Let's go to the next slide. Once you've submitted your Fafsa and it has been processed, just like that previous screen showed us, you can open up the student aid report. Student aid report will give you certain bits of information. This particular Fafsa, if you see in that first top box, it says process date, October 22nd, 2018. Well, obviously this is an older student aid report. To the right of that, it gives us an EFC, expected family contribution. That's the key product of the Fafsa form. The Fafsa is taking information from you about your finances. What was your income? What is your savings and investments for the parent? Students, where are you working? What was your income? What does your savings and investments look like? If you work your way down, it's going to ask the question on the left, your answers on the right. Many of them have been blanked out just to keep information private. And you can work your way through the 5 to 7 pages that follow and make sure you have your red pen out so that any errors that you see, you can go back in and address them in the edit page.
I have a question. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have a question. The retrieval tool, where do we access that from? Because doesn't that pull all of our information from our 2020 taxes?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. So the data retrieval tool, for starters, the Fafsa, as I said earlier, really is a student form. So it's going to start off by asking student information. Some of it's going to be populated because the student signed in with their Fsa ID and password information that they've already provided when they applied for that ID and password. So certain bits of information is already going to be in there. First name, last name, social security number, date of birth, address, so on and so forth. It's going to go through a series of questions asking the student, what schools would you like to send the student aid report to? And there's a search tool where you're going to be able to search by the name of the college or the state that the college is located in. It's going to ask you if you're going to be staying on campus, living home with parents, or staying off campus. Ultimately, you're going to get to the parent section. The parent section starts off by parent number 1, last name, first initial, date of birth, social security number. Parent 2, same questions, last name, first initial, date of birth, social security number. It works its way through the parent section, and it asks the question, have you filed your 2020 tax return? There's going to be a drop down. The drop down is going to say already completed, will file, or not required to file. Well, in all likelihood, you filed your 2020 tax return, so you're going to click the box that says already completed. Once you click that already completed option, it's going to open up a new question, which is going to say, would you like to use the data retrieval tool to populate the Fafsa with your 2020 tax information? You click yes.
Okay, cool.
You're going to provide your ID and password. Go ahead.
Okay, so another good question though. So what happens, like I'm divorced. So what happens if I use mine? How am I supposed to get, like, am I supposed to be putting my son's father's information all in this as well?
No. And I'll get to that also, but I'll give you a little quick preview. The Fafsa is only concerned with what is referred to as the custodial parent.
Okay.
Custodial parent is the parent that the student lives with the most. So let's make the assumption that the student lives with you.
Uh-huh.
So you're the custodial household.
Okay.
So you filed your 2020 tax return. Are you remarried?
No.
Okay. So as a divorced parent, you would file head of household.
Yeah. Head
of household, as opposed to married filing jointly when you were married, or filing singly before you were married. Okay. But now that you're divorced, you're the head of household, providing that you have a dependent, a son or a daughter who is considered your dependent.
Okay.
So the question also will ask you before you enter the IRS website, did you file jointly, head of household, or single?
Okay.
Well, you would click, now you want your tax return in front of you before you do this, just to confirm, because it's going to block you if you pick the wrong filing status. So if your tax return, and I'll tell you this, you can be divorced, but your ex-husband may have claimed the kids as dependents. That would make you a single filer.
Well, hold on, wait, let me interrupt for 1 second. We are divorced, but we each claim one child as a dependent on tax season. So how does that work?
You're a head of household. That's fine.
Yeah. So it
doesn't matter who has claimed the student who will be attending college next fall. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So what you're going to do, and understand for a moment, and just visualize this. In the parent section, after the student section, it's going to ask you if you filed your 2020 tax return. The drop-down says already completed, will file, or not required to file. You're going to click already completed. It's going to give you another question. Would you like to use the data retrieval tool? Yes. What status did you file? Married, filing jointly, head of household, that's you, head of household, make a note. Okay. Yep. You're going to click that. You're going to click the button to get to the IRS website. In order to do that, you're going to enter your ID and password, the one that you selected or you created with fsaid.ed.gov. This is the first opportunity that you're going to have to use it.
Okay.
It's going to take you are now leaving the Fafsa website, and you're going to hit now the IRS website.
Okay.
Once you're on the IRS website, it's going to ask you if you would like to transfer your information. You click yes. It's then going to show you a page where your name is going to be in there, and it's going to ask you to accurately provide the address as it appears on your tax return.
Okay.
And I mean specifically. So if you live on a street or an avenue and your tax return says 123 Main AVE period, and you type in 123 Main AVENUE, it's going to be rejected. That's why your tax return's got to be in front of you.
Okay.
All the way down to the exact zip code. If there's an apartment and you live in apartment B and your tax return says 1B, you have to make sure it says APT.1B if that's exactly how it reads. It's going to say, okay, we've hit. Would you like to transfer the information now? Yes, transfer my information. Boom. The FAFSA is now populated with your tax information.
Cool. Okay.
Still in the parent section. In the parent section, it will also ask you a couple of other questions. One of which is, are you receiving child support? You're going to have to provide that answer.
Okay.
It's going to also ask you, what are your savings and investments valued at? Your savings and investments do not include your retirement account. Do not include your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, or any annuity investments that are tax deferred.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing, as far as your assets, if you have a second home that you rent out, or even if you don't rent it out, that is an investment. You put the net value of that home, the value of the home minus the mortgage, the money you owe on the home. Okay. You're not to provide, as I said, your retirement information, your small business ownership, or it'll come to me. I'll get back to that. So the point being, and to answer your question, you sort of follow what I'm talking about as far as accessing the data retrieval tool. One thing that you'll note at the bottom of each page is my contact information. Telephone number is my cell phone. If you're working on this FAFSA and it's crunch time and you really don't know what to do, send me a text.
Okay.
If I can answer your text or pick up the phone and call you and get you through it, I'll do so. I get telephone calls all the time.
Okay.
Okay. Once you work your way through the rest of the FAFSA, providing all the information, the submit button, after you provide your signature, is where you'll use your ID and password one more time. Okay. Let's go to the next slide.
All right. We did have a and that those are awesome questions. We just have a couple of questions. So Ms. Brillo, do you want to go first?
As many as you need.
Yes, hi. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so one of my questions was about that, when you were talking about that editing button, I've heard or I've been told that you can only fill out up to 10 schools at one time on the FAFSA. Is that correct or incorrect?
That was somewhat muffled. Could you?
Can you fill out more than 10 schools on the FAFSA? Or are you limited to 10 schools on the FAFSA?
Yes, okay. So the FAFSA does give you the opportunity to send the student aid report to 10 schools. Then you have to submit the FAFSA. After it's been processed and you can access the student aid report, you would then edit the FAFSA, remove some of the 10 or all of the 10 schools, and add back as many new schools as you wish. That's the editing portion of the FAFSA. And again, if it's confusing, give me a call, send me a text.
So another question. So you submit and then it says you've been successful, like a green circle or something that you showed us earlier. And then after that, you can do it again and add more schools? Or is there a wait period? Or how does that work? Like, how do I know when I can?
Michael or Scott, I'm going to have to ask you to.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's just basically saying, is there a time frame after you submit that you have that where the 10 schools go out first, and then when you go back and edit, should you wait some time in between, or can you just submit, edit, submit again?
Yes. So when you submit the FAFSA information, including all your financial information, goes to the central processing. Central processing then will electronically send out a student aid report to every one of the schools that you've listed. Those schools will receive the student aid report, whether your son or daughter has applied there or not. They're going to receive that electronic download. The school is going to put that student aid report in a file and match it up with the application. If an application hasn't been received, they'll put it in a file until the application comes in. But as soon as that has been processed and you are able to see the student aid report on the Fafsa website by signing back in a few days later, you can delete them all. And you can add all new schools and you can submit it again. And now central processing will then blast out electronic student aid reports to all of those new schools. You can do it over and over and over again. There's no limit to how many times you can edit the Fafsa and send it out to new schools. As I said, whether your son or daughter is applying to that school or not, they're going to get it.
So
the end of the application period, May 1st, any Fafsas that they can't match up with applications, they're just going to dump.
So the wait time is a few days, really?
Yeah, it's only a few days before it's processed and submitted. And sometimes it only takes a day and a half. The point that I'll make to you is this. You're going to go into the Fafsa, you're going to put all the information, you're going to submit it, and then you're going to go back in a day or two later, and you're going to click on View Student Aid Report. But as soon as you get in there, it'll tell you, remember the previous screen? Your Fafsa was successfully processed?
Yeah.
Remember the name Carson?
Yeah.
You're going to see that when you sign back in. So you're going to go in. If you go in on a Friday and complete the Fafsa, go back in again on Monday or go back in again on Sunday and take a look and then edit it if it's already been processed. You're going to get a process date.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Then we'll have Ms. Cronkite.
Different question?
Yeah, and then Ms. Cronkite or Ms. Fine, they had their hands up. So either one, whoever wants to jump in first.
I'm here. I'm Jessica. I have one question. So I'm also in a divorce situation, custodial parent, remarried, filed 2020 joint. So how do I list myself? Do I also list myself head of household, or do I have to do joint married?
No, because if you list yourself, if you list yourself head of household and you try the data retrieval tool and your tax return has been filed married, filing jointly, you're not going to be able to use the data retrieval tool, will be rejected. So let's talk for a minute. The kids live with you, I assume.
So the other tricky part is I also did not get to claim her on 2020. My ex-husband.
That's fine. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Of no importance. Yeah, and again, remember that the court, the divorce court, awards the exemption status. Sometimes they'll alternate it odd, even years. Sometimes if there's two children, you flip-flop every other year. But it doesn't matter who claims the student as a dependent on their tax return. The custodial parent is determined by where the student lives the most. It can even be 6 months in a day with one parent.
Yes.
That becomes the custodial parent. Now, there's no one who's really going to scrutinize it. So suppose for a moment, mom and dad are divorced. Suppose for a moment, both mom and dad live in Wayne. Suppose for a moment that the student's information at the school says that there's two residences on file. Some parents will say, well, let's select the parent who has the lowest income as a custodial parent. That'll improve the chances of getting financial aid. If that's the decision that you make, there's no way they're going to be able to verify that or deny it if you live in the same town. Now, obviously, if one parent lived in New York City and the other lived in Wayne, and you said, well, no, the student lives with, dad who lives in New York City. Well, how does the student get to school every morning? That's a little bit difficult to justify. You understand?
Yeah.
Now, with a second marriage, several things occur. Well, first of all, you and your new husband are the custodial parents, even though your new husband is not biological parent. You're the custodial parent. So when you get to the parent section of the Fafsa, it's going to ask for the information in the custodial household. So you're going to list, let's say you as parent 1, last name, first initial, date of birth, social security number, parent 2, your husband's last name, current husband, his first initial, his date of birth, his social, even though he may not be obligated or responsible to pay for any of your son or daughter's college. He's part of the custodial household also. Okay. It's going to ask for the family size. Suppose you have 2 children. Suppose he has 2 children. Even though his 2 children don't live with you guys, that's 4 children. And potentially 2 or 3 of them might be in college at the same time. There's opportunity there. That's another conversation when you get to that point. If you need to, give me a call.
Okay, so can I just back up 1 second? I don't want to take up everybody's time because my situation is a lot different than most. When you said, you know, with the custodial and my new husband is considered under me with the custodial, I'm going to put my current husband's information in there, not my ex's.
Correct.
Okay.
Your ex, no, quite honestly, doesn't appear at all on the Fafsa application.
Not even as parent number 2.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Not at all. Nowhere. Okay. You know, I mean, consider for a moment, mom and dad are divorced. Yeah. Let's say dad makes $500,000 a year. Let's say mom is collecting alimony and child support, $60,000 a year, right? As I said, dad has $500,000 of income annually. Let's say he has $1 million in savings and investments. Mom is a custodial parent. Okay. Mom puts her name. Nowhere does dad's name appear. Mom puts her income, $60,000, which is a combination of alimony and child support. They don't even concern themselves with dad's $500,000 worth of income. His name does not appear, and there's no information provided on behalf. Okay. He's not part of the custodial household. Mom qualifies for the earth and the moon in financial aid, even though dad can easily afford to pay many times over.
Right.
His information is not even considered.
Okay. Can I ask one more quick question? So what happens with parents situations where, you know, 2020 was good for me, and, you know, it changed into 2021 where it's worse?
That's a change in family circumstances. That's something I will get to in a couple slides from now.
Okay, great.
But yes, that's something that is very, very important, and obviously so. Your son or daughter is not attending college till the fall of 2022. Yet you provided 2020 information. Things have changed drastically. Illness, divorce, a loss of bonus, a loss of job. Anything could have happened in those 2 years. The Fafsa is not asking you to be able to explain any of that, but there is an opportunity to explain it to the school once an acceptance letter is received. I will talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
We have 2 more questions, Ms. Fine.
Yep.
Hi, thank you so much. I guess my question's a little bit opposite of what Jessica was asking. My 2020, because of COVID, was very bad. And now I have a better situation financially. So I don't know if that would impact, I obviously would just put my 2020 tax information, but
no, consider yourself blessed. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
It may have been tough to go through 2020 because it was a tough year for you, but now you're going to benefit in the financial aid side of it because they're looking at your 2020 information, which was, let's call it deficient. Yeah. So you're going to qualify for financial aid. In the second year of school, when you fill out the second year's FAFSA, it's going to reflect higher numbers and you may not get as much financially.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay.
And then we have one more question, Miss Rosa.
Hi, I'm asking a question regarding, well, in place of my mother. So, she had a question, like my father claimed me for his taxes in 2020, and she's asking if she can fill out the FAFSA with one parent 1 year, and now for this year with her, since she's now claiming me on her taxes for 2021.
So for a moment, You're a student, am I correct? You're a senior?
Yes.
Okay. And your mom claimed you as a dependent for 2020, is that what you said?
2021. My father claimed me 2020.
Okay, which is fine, You live with your mom, right?
Yes.
Okay, so your mom is the custodial parent. Even though your name appears on your dad's tax return as his dependent, it doesn't matter. It's going to change next year, but it doesn't matter. Right now, the Fafsa does not look at the tax return as any indication of custodial family. And the reason it doesn't is because it is the court that awards, let's call it child support, dependency status, custodial status, and also who gets to take it as an exemption on the tax return. Often the court will give it to the higher income earner, because the higher income earner will very likely be paying child support. So the court will give the exemption status to the higher income earner who is paying child support as where your name will appear. Now, in your case, it flip-flops, right? One year you're on your dad's return, the next year you're on your mom's return. Don't be concerned. It makes no bit of difference.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, awesome. We'll move on to the next slide. It'll start
Okay,
the
next
expected
slide
family
is the
contribution.
tax return, 2020 tax return for John and Susie Q. So what the Fafsa is looking at, and I'm going to go through a little bit of the mechanics of the Fafsa. In order to determine what is referred to as expected family contribution, EFC, expected family contribution is how much a family is expected to pay for one student to attend college for 1 year. Again, expected family contribution, it's only a number. Doesn't mean anything other than what the family might be expected to pay for one student for 1 year of college. So the components that go into the EFC, they're going to look first at the parent's adjusted gross income. Now, if you look at this tax return, the adjusted gross income appears on line 11. Last year, the 2019 return, it was line 8. Tax returns also changed, just like FAFSA's. But in 2020, it's line 11. And if you notice to the left of that, it says, this is your adjusted gross income. Now, you understand also that when you connect to the IRS, to the data retrieval tool, all this information will be populated automatically if you're successful in using the DRT, the data retrieval tool. But they look at the adjusted gross income and they measure it, and this is all internal, you don't see it anywhere. It's measured at 22 to 47%. So 47% is hit once the adjusted gross income is $70,000 or more. So in this case, on this example, we have $100,000 adjusted gross income, 47% of that is $47,000. Automatically, your FAFSA would result in an EFC, expected family contribution, of 47 grand, right? That's what you would figure. But the Department of Education gives you a family allowance based on family size. The Department of Education has determined that it costs about $28,000 a year to raise a family of 4. Now, I should be hearing a lot of laughter right now. I don't hear it, but it costs a lot more than $28,000 to raise a family of 4. The family allowance will take that $100,000 down to $78,000. Still above the $70,000 number, therefore, 47% of 78,000 is about 33 grand. So your expected family contribution will come out to about $33,000, only considering your income, because now they're going to look at your assets, your savings excluding your IRA, your 401k, your 403b, and annuities, right? Savings is going to be calculated at 5.64%. So if you had $100,000 in savings and investments, 5.64% is $5,640. We're going to add that to the $33,000 from income. Follow? So now we're up to around 38,500. So your expected family contribution, what you're expected to be able to afford to pay for one student for 1 year, is at 38,000 and change, with an adjusted gross income of 100,000 and savings and investments of 100,000. But the IRS gives you an age-based allowance on savings. And just to use a thumbnail sketch, at the age of 50, the oldest of the two parents, the first 50,000 in savings and investments is not counted. So that $5,640 is knocked down to what, $2,730 ballpark? So instead of being at 38.5, you're now at somewhere around 34, 35,000 EFC. I hope you sort of follow that logic. And that's just for your mind, because it's not going to affect you and it's not going to appear anywhere on the Fafsa. But that's the mechanics of how the expected family contribution works. So in this case, I have, right below John and Susie Q, I have New Jersey resident, 2 kids, 1 in college, age 50, which means first 50 doesn't count. Look at their savings, $50,000 doesn't count. 100,000, that means with a family size allowance, 4 in the family, they're now looking at about $33,000 expected family contribution. What does it cost to send a kid to college? 40, 50, 60,000, depending on what school you go to. This is what the Department of Ed is saying. This is what you're expected to be able to afford to pay. I also mentioned that there's 2 kids with 1 in college. So suppose for a moment your EFC comes out to, in this case, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 ballpark. There's certain other allowances that come into play, state income taxes, Social Security, and so on and so forth. But let's say it comes out at 25,000, which I'm going to show you in the next couple of pages. With 1 in college, the EFC is 25,000. 2 in college, they divide that number in half. 12,500 per kid, which makes the possibility of financial aid even greater because your EFC is lower. Okay, I hope you sort of follow that bit of logic, because I'm going to play into the next couple of slides. One thing that they don't care about is what it costs to live in northern New Jersey. I mean, property taxes in northern New Jersey are probably the highest in the nation. If you lived in Iowa or Kentucky or Kansas, your property taxes might be less than $1,000 a year. Well, here they might be 10, 11, 12, $15,000. Department of Education doesn't care about that. If you're making $100,000 in northern New Jersey or making $100,000 living in Kansas, you're still looked at in the same light as far as what you can or can't afford. They don't care. Well, I'm not saying no care. They have not accommodated for it. Let's go to the next screen.
We do have a couple questions. Raja?
Yeah, thanks. So 2 questions. One, how is the 529 assets then considered in that EFC? And then 2, we have 4 kids, but they're not all in college. 1 will be going in. Does it change if they're not in college or only if they're in college?
Okay, so let's start with the 529 question. As I had mentioned, when they look at the parents' income, they measure 22 to 47%. Remember that, right? 22 to 47% of your adjusted gross income. That's how we arrive at the $33,000 number. They're also going to ask if your son or daughter works. They're going to ask if your son or daughter has made more than $6,000. Actually, they're just going to ask how much they made. The first $6,000 for the student doesn't count. Everything above $6,000 is measured at 50%. Remember, parent tops out at 47%, the student's income, everything over $6,000 is 50%. Remember, the parent's assets are measured at 5.64%. The student's assets are measured at 20 cents on the dollar. 529 is considered a parent asset. So the 529 is measured at 5.64%. Now there was an account that existed, that still exists. It's called the Uniform Gift of Minors Act account, GMA. Also, if you put money in a checking account under your son or daughter's name, $1, 20 cents on the dollar. So the idea is that you don't want to necessarily have money in your son or daughter's names, even though they earned it, or you consider it their money. it's going to hurt you in college. I met a family one time.
Quick question. So when you're putting in that 529 number, do we only put in the amount that we have put aside for that child, or do we put the entire account? Because I have 4 different kids' names for the account.
Right. Okay. And the best way for me to answer that question is to think of it this way. 529 does not belong to the super. 529 belongs to you. You're the owner of that account. So you own 4 accounts with 529 money in it. You have named a beneficiary of each of those accounts. So account number 1 is in your name for the benefit of your son. Account 2 is in your name for the benefit of your daughter. Account number 3 is in your name. They're all your money. It's all your money. And you can change the beneficiaries at any time. If your oldest doesn't go to college or drops out after a year, you can use that money for your second child. But it's all your money. So you as the parent who owns the asset has to report all 4. Make sense?
Yep. So then, so then that other question about, so only one of them is going to be in college now. Is that EFC going to be full boat, or will it be discounted because there's 3 more, but they're not in college?
Okay, so that's where earlier a question was asked, what if family circumstances change? Keep in mind, though, that when you fill out the FAFSA, it's going to ask how many in your family? 6. How many will be attending college? 1. Okay. Now, what's a circumstance that might change? Suppose for a moment that one of your other children, let's see, has special needs, has to attend a school that costs more than attending a free public school. That's a circumstance that has to be pointed out to the college once the acceptance letter rolls in. So, will you get a discount for an extenuating circumstance like having to spend additional money for special needs? Absolutely. Suppose for a moment that you just decide to send some of your other children to a parochial school just because maybe they need a little bit more attention or they're getting a better education, and you're spending $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year. You have to point that out to the school, and you will then get some additional consideration for more financial aid. But if you have 4 kids and they're all in the public school system, it is duly noted on the FAFSA, family of 6, 1 in college. Next year, family of 6, 2 in college, a little bit better consideration. So yes, you have to report all of the 529 money, and the fact of the matter is the information they've gathered from you is going to help them determine how much financial aid you're going to need. Any special circumstances you'll have to point out.
All right, and then we have another question. That was a great one. Arif Rahal.
Question? I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah. Is there a question? All right, what we'll do, Mr. Traits, we'll move on. We're going to move on to the second slide of the 2020 tax return.
Let's go 2 slides now and we're going to hit the slide that says cost of attendance. You see that one?
Yep, total cost all in.
Okay, so we know what EFC is. We know that the expected family contribution is what they expect you might be able to afford to pay for 1 year for 1 student. Now, each college publishes on their website the cost of attending that school. And it's the all in. Go to the next slide. I'll demonstrate this a little better. On the next slide, you see the cost of attendance at an Ivy League. Tuition and fees, $58,000. I'm just estimating these numbers. Ivy League, $58,000 tuition and fees. Room and board, $17,000. Books and supplies, $1,500. Transportation, $1,400. Personal expenses, $1,600. And it goes down, private, public, and state. So the cost of attendance all the way on the right is going to be listed on every school's website. And to determine what you figure you might or might not wind up with, we're going to take the cost of attendance minus your expected family contribution. to come up with something called need. Now, before I said that the EFC is only a number, doesn't really mean a whole lot, because it determines need, but nobody's going to satisfy your need. Or nobody's expected to. No college is going to say, oh, okay, this is your need, we're going to take care of it. That isn't going to happen. So the cost of attendance is all in. Everything. Now, my daughter Danielle is an example. She attended Drexel University in Philadelphia, private institution. So her cost was somewhere around the $55,000 number, just what it lists on private when she went. And for argument's sake, we live in northern New Jersey, we live in Wyckoff. And she would want to come home from Philadelphia for the weekend just to get out of the city. So she would take the train. We'd pick her up in either Newark or Secaucus. But the cost of the train from Philadelphia back home is part of the transportation cost that the school estimates. They know that these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids are going to want to come home. And they're going to travel great distances. Some of them are going to have to fly. So the school comes up with the transportation cost. Danielle's estimate for books and supplies was somewhere around $1,500. We got away with about $1,200 for her major. Doesn't matter. The idea is the cost of attendance minus the EFC gives you an idea of what the need is. It also gives the school a little bit of an idea of what the need is. Let's go to the next page. We'll go back to that John and Susie Q. Example of an EFC of $25,000. Family of four, one attending college. Custodial parents are married, both age 50. First 50 doesn't count. Their adjusted gross is 100,000. Savings and investments, 50 grand doesn't count. Students' income, 3,000. It's below the 6,000 number. Hope I'm not talking too fast and you're following with me. Student has no savings. Savings would have been assessed at 20 cents on the dollar. Remember, students' income over 6,000 would be assessed at 50 cents on the dollar, as opposed to the parent 47%. All right, let's go to the next page. Based on financial need, EFC from income and savings is reported on the Fafsa tuition, and at the bottom, cost of attendance minus the EFC equals need, which the next page will better demonstrate. And this is going to give us a real good idea of where money comes from. Remember, I told you in the beginning that federal financial aid or grants are hard to come by. You have to really show a very low annual income or a loss of a job completely. Your income has to be about $30,000 or less to get the full Pell Grant. Pell Grant is only $7 grand. It's not going to cover the cost of college. But let's look at this for a moment. Let's look at this rubric. Community college costs $5,000, cost of attendance. Below that, your expected family contribution for John and Susie Q is 25 grand. Well, they have no need, zero. Let's look at the next, state college. Cost of attendance, $26,000. They're expected to be able to afford 25 grand. They have a need of $1,000. No one's going to pay for that. There's no guarantee. Let's go to the elite, all the way to the right. $60,000, $25,000 EFC. Their need is 35 grand. How are they going to afford to cover the cost of attending an elite? Well, let's consider for a moment. The elites are Princeton, Harvard, Yale, Brown, Duke, Emory, these big name schools that are going to charge you $60,000 and $70,000 plus to go to. These schools that accept students with a minimum of a 4.0 grade point average, with a minimum of a perfect SAT score. Unless for a moment, the school is looking to achieve diversification. Diversification is geographical, it is economic, it is ethnic. So the point being is the school might accept someone from New Mexico. Harvard might accept someone from New Mexico with a 3.8 average, where they'll turn down someone from New Jersey with a 4.0 grade point average, because they don't get a lot of applicants from New Mexico, right? Or from Oregon, or from somewhere else remote geographically. So the point being is that the elites can afford to charge full tuition and give no free money away, no merit aid. Remember, financial aid comes in the form of federal, which is very limited, state, which is only if you go to school in the state of New Jersey, and show need. And the last is merit. Merit is where the big money comes from. If the elites can afford to charge a student $60,000, $70,000 a year to attend, they're making money. Well, school is a profit center. That's what they're a business for. Yes, they educate, but they're there to make money. If a private school who gets, let's say, an average of a 3.6, 3.8 grade point average, and accepts them, where the elites are looking for the 4.0 student, the privates will charge less than the elites, but they're looking to attract the 4.0 student. So let's look at it the other way. The private school, private college wants to become an elite. How do they become an elite? By attracting higher academic achieved students. If the private school can bring in some 4.0 students, they're raising their academic average. They get inching closer and closer to the elite, and they can then begin to charge more and more and more. You understand that the colleges are in competition with each other. It's not our kids who are competing with each other to get into the best schools. That's what they want you to believe. Colleges are competing for those great students. Have you heard of Rider University? Rider University is located about an hour and a half south of us. Rider University is a great private school. If you go to the Rider University website, you'll find something on there that's called the Presidential Scholar. Presidential Scholar is an advertisement, and it says, if you have a 3.2 grade point average or higher, and if you've achieved a 1200 or higher on your SAT, apply, because we're going to consider you a presidential scholar, and we're going to knock $25,000 off the cost of a $57,000 school. That's merit aid. Why is Rider doing that? Rider is doing that because they want kids with higher grade point averages than 3.2. They don't want to have to accept a 2.5, 2.8. That's keeping them in the middle of the road. They want to work their way toward the elite. They want to jump from the column on the left to the column on the right. Can you still hear me? I heard a beep.
Yeah, totally
we're
perfect.
Good.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So the point that I'm making, my daughter Danielle attended Drexel University, and the cost of attendance was $55,000. But Drexel has money to give away for what they consider high achievers. Danielle had a 3.8 grade point average. Danielle had a 1,300, I think, on her SAT, which is above average. One deal that we made with our kids, if you get accepted at a school that you're applying to, you're going to student orientation day. That shows the school that you're interested. Remember back in the beginning of this slide presentation, I showed you that May 1st date. Danielle was accepted at 8 out of the 9 schools she applied to. The one school she was denied at was probably the easiest school she could have gotten into. But that school didn't accept her because they looked at her GPA, they looked at her SAT score, and they figured this is a safety school for her. And she's probably not going to accept coming to our school if we offer her admission. So why should we have to be concerned that this kid might drag us along till May 1st? Because after May 1st, every accepted student is no longer an accepted student. That's the drop dead date. She was accepted at 8 schools, and they held those seats open to her until she called them and said, I'm not coming, or until May 1st rolled around and they said, I haven't heard from her, she's gone. So she was a 3.8 grade point average. By May 1st, what's left to choose from? There's an open seat ready for Danielle. And now they got to scramble and find some other student who hasn't accepted a college somewhere else with a much lower grade point average. So you understand, it's a balancing act. Just like this slide shows, moving from column to the left to column to the right, they want to put incentive money up there, and they want to make you jump at it. So Danielle was accepted at 8 schools. She got a presidential scholarship award over at Rider University. I said, Danielle, you want to go to Rider? She goes, nah, I don't want to go there. But look, it's $25,000. Nah, I don't want to go there. You want to go to Drexel? They offered you a nice package. No, I don't want to go there. Well, you're going to Drexel's orientation day. You're going to Rider's orientation day, and you're going to kick the tires. She walked out of Drexel University after student orientation and says, I'm going to Drexel. So they made her feel important, and she wound up with a nice financial aid package. Not only that, when they saw her at orientation day, they said, this student is interested. We're going to make a play for her. We're not going to have to wait till May. We're going to sell her and close the deal. And that's what they did. They closed the deal. They gave her incentives. They offered her the opportunity to sing in the chamber choir with an additional $2,500 worth of scholarships. They offered her the honors dorm, early registration. They bent over backwards to get this kid because they wanted to fill that seat with a 3.8 grade point average as opposed to having to settle for maybe for a 2.8 somewhere down the road. She called all the other schools, said, I'm not coming. Thank you very much. Graduated in 4 years, still living in Philadelphia. So the point that I'm trying to make here is you have to look at it from the point of view. Yes, the FAFSA is necessary, but the FAFSA is not going to get you money. Although it does give the school the opportunity to see what your family's financial capabilities are. And it allows the school the opportunity to make a play for your son or daughter. So don't hesitate to apply to those schools that you think you can't afford, because the schools that you think you can't afford are the ones who have the deepest pockets. And those are the schools that want to jump the column from the private to the elites. And there's a lot of them out there. I hope you sort of follow that line of thought.
Right. Mr. Trace, we'll go for about another 15 minutes. Try to get through to about 8:30.
Let's move along a little quicker then. So I hope everyone sort of got the grasp of this. So let's go to the next slide. Who's eligible? U.S. citizens, high school graduates of the GED, an eligible degree, valid social security number. On the FAFSA, it's going to ask your sons to agree to sign up for the selective service. That's going to be changing. We'll get to that in a minute. Go to the next slide. You've heard of need blind schools. A need blind school is a school that when you fill out the Common App and they said, do you plan on applying for financial aid? Parents sometimes are hesitant. Should I click that box or not? Because if you say I'm applying for financial aid, will the school possibly not give you as much consideration for acceptance? Some parents feel that if they don't click the box, I don't need financial aid, it'll cost the school less for the kid to attend, therefore the school is more likely to accept. Well, the 568 presidential group was formed in 1992. 28 colleges got together, 28 college presidents, and decided, you know, these 28 schools, even though there's only 24 listed here, but these 28 schools have decided that we're not going to consider a person who is going to click the box where you're going to apply for financial aid. Let's go to the next box.
We did have a question, Ms. Maybrown.
I want you to forget.
Yeah, I had a question going back to when you were talking about the kids, if they have, did you say if they have over $6,000 saved in their account, that could hurt you? Is that what you said, or did I mishear that?
Income. If a kid earns $6,000, it is not counted against their income assessment. Income is measured at 50 cents on the dollar for every dollar above 6,000. As far as their savings, they're assessed at 20 cents on the dollar from $1 in savings.
So if they work and they have saved from working over 6,000 in an account, should we cut it off? Okay, forget that number. Okay.
If they work and they have $1,000 in their savings, if they have $100 in their savings, 20 cents on the dollar is going to be calculated in the EFC calculation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and what I'll say to you about that is this: many parents have, opened up checking accounts for their sons and daughters. We give you a quick piece of advice. If your son or daughter's name is listed first on a joint account and the parent's name is listed second, the student's social security is also listed first. And it is the student's social security number that is going to receive the 1099 tax reporting statement, which gives a clear indication to the college that the student has saved money, because they're going to have to file a tax return. Now, even though interest rates are very, very low, a small savings account is not going to reflect a huge amount of interest on their 1099. Okay, but if they have mutual funds, 1099 dividend statement is going to show that they have money. I don't know what you can do about that. But the point that I'll make to you is that if your checking account is a joint account, student's name first, mom's name is second, switch it around, flip-flop it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Back this one up. Forget everything I told you about the EFC. Got that slide?
Yes.
Okay, so next year, there's going to be a drastic change in the Fafsa. The Fafsa is going to change the EFC to what is called the Student Aid Index. Student Aid Index is going to be calculated similar. Cost of attendance minus the Student Aid Index is going to show financial need. They're going to increase the opportunity for more parents to wind up with a Pell Grant. Pell Grant is just under $7,000, and your income has to be below $30,000 just to gross to get the Pell Grant. They're going to expand that. They're also changing the custodial parent rule. Right now, the custodial parent rule is whichever parent the student lives with. A lot of parents choose the lower income earner. In the future, they're going to call the custodial parent whichever one takes it on their income tax return. You know, the young lady, the student who asked the question, Dad has me listed as his dependent. Dad's going to have to be the custodial parent next year. This first year, it's not going to matter. I really don't agree with that because it's the court. It's the divorce court. It's the judge who decides who gets to take the student as a dependent. The student can live with mom, and mom can be supporting the student based on her alimony and child support. I don't think that it's fair, but that's the way that's going to happen. We'll see if it untangles later on down the road. They're also removing the rule where you divide. Remember I said the EFC is divided by 2 if 2 kids are in college? They're changing the student aid index. Each kid is going to have the same higher EFC or SAI, as it's referred to. So there's a number of things next year. When we talk again, it's going to be a little bit of a shakeup. Certain things are better. Other things I don't necessarily agree with, but that's a story. Let's go to the next slide. So financial aid. There is an opportunity for freshman students. I like to refer to it as the signing bonus. The parent who asked the question, I had a terrible 2020 year. You're in good shape. Reason being is because that merit award, the thing that's going to attract your son or daughter from moving from a private institution instead of electing to pay full price and go to an elite, the merit award, just like Rider University puts on the table, is good for 4 years. They want your son or daughter to sign up, to agree to come. And if you become the presidential scholar at Rider University and they give you $25,000 the first year, that acceptance letter is going to say $25,000 is good for 4 years, provided you remain a full-time student and maintain a B average or better. A signing bonus is a big award. Pell Grant, as I mentioned, this slide is a little bit old. It's showing a $6,400. It's closer to $7,000 now. SCOG, Supplemental Equal Opportunity Grant, $4,000. And that's for really students who show need. You got a subsidized loan. This is where you can borrow some money from the federal government and pay no interest and make no payments. $3,500 first year student. Direct subsidized loan, second year student, $4,500, $5,500 for junior, $5,500 for senior. Unsubsidized, an additional $2,000 each year. Graduate in 4 years. You're going to graduate with $27,000 worth of student loans taken. You get that awarded as long as you fill out the FAFSA. Next page. Why I hate loans. The Parent Plus loan. Origination fee. The Plus loan, you see that? Origination fee. You're paying 4.25 points almost up front. Plus you're paying 6.28% annual. That's horrible. You can borrow money, get your home equity line of credit at about 3%. And you get a tax deduction if you don't use the standard deduction. 6.28 plus almost 4.25 in origination. But look at the New Jersey class loan. 3 points origination. The rates are a little bit better. 10-year fixed rate, $299. 15-year, 3.5. 20-year, 4.75. So I hate loans, and I'd rather talk to you guys, if you run into difficulty, about a number of different banks that I might suggest where they might be able to help you out. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Just trying to make heads or tails out of where I'm at here.
The FAFSA ID and password.
Okay. Okay, so senior parents, what you need to do, you don't have to wait till tomorrow. You can tonight, you can go on the fsaid.ed.gov website. If you haven't already done so, apply for an ID for yourself, one of the 2 parents, and for your student, sit your student next to you. Do that right away. Write it down carefully. And then that opens the door for you to start working on your Fafsa, which you can start working on Friday. Real quick, CSS Profile, next page. Out of the 4,700 schools in the US, about 10% will ask for an additional form. CSS Profile is accessed on the collegeboard.org website, same place you went for the SAT. Right now, the Fafsa doesn't ask for the value of your home. CSS Profile does. Right now, the Fafsa only asks for the custodial parent information. CSS Profile asks for both parents, custodial parent, non-custodial parent. And if the non-custodial parent is dad and he's remarried, you don't know about her too. You could potentially have to assess for parents' incomes, for parents' savings. Go to the next slide. Information on how you can access the CSS Profile. Michael, I guess I'll provide you with, or you can post these slides on the website for the parents to review.
Perfect, yes.
Look at this, look at the next slide, which is state of New Jersey. On your Fafsa, if your son or daughter is applying to a New Jersey school, once you submit it, that confirmation page, after you submitted your Fafsa, will say, do you have a brother or sister? Remember, this is a student form. Do you have a brother or sister who also needs to complete the Fafsa? Click yes, it'll populate some of the fields, including the DRT. It will also give you the opportunity to complete your state application. Go to the next slide. This is what the old Fafsa looked like. They may have changed the page. I can't see what the new one looks like until after tomorrow. But the button in the middle, circled in orange, click here and you start your state tax return. Why do you want to do the state tax return? Next slide. Because of tuition aid grants. They can be huge. If your adjusted gross income is $0 to $65,000, you can qualify. If your son or daughter goes to a school in the state of New Jersey, doesn't have to be a state school. We're almost done. Let's go with the TAG award grants, 22-23, big numbers. Community college, $2,800 a year. Go to school that might cost you $5,000 to go to. It's more than half. State college is $8,700. Public, $10,000. Non-public, $13,000. Rowan, $8,000. Rutgers, $9,400. NJIT, look at these numbers. If your adjusted gross income is below $65,000, consider going to school in the state of New Jersey. Next slide. What are you looking at right now?
NJ Stars.
Okay, skip the next one. NJ Stars is the ability to go to college. Top 15% of the graduating class goes to college, community college, for 2 years for free. Talk to your guidance officers if you're in that top 15% number. You're looking at 529 college savings plans?
Yes.
Okay. New law, New Jersey just passed it. You put money into a 529 at the state of New Jersey level, Franklin Fund. It's called NJ Best. You can write off up to $10,000 on your state of New Jersey resident return. This has never been allowed before. New York has had it for years. It's a good opportunity and a big incentive to put money into a 529. Next page, communicate. I'm going to wrap it up here. The important thing is to communicate with the school, especially if circumstances have changed. There's divorce in the family, there's an illness, there are medical bills that insurance is not paying, there's any undue cost. A parent has moved in with you and now you're providing more than half of the support for the parent. Things have changed. These schools make a play for our kids. Real quick, my daughter Danielle, I told you about Alyssa, wanted to be a film student, looked at 5 schools. Ithaca Park School of Communication was her number 1 choice. She wanted to be a film student. She got accepted at 4 schools and she didn't hear from Ithaca. I said, Alyssa, you got to call them. You got to tell them you're interested. She said, no. I called them. Hi, this is Bob Trades. My daughter really, really wants to come to Ithaca. She applied to 5 schools. She's only got accepted. She got accepted to 4. She hasn't heard from you. What's the story? Well, I have to tell you, she's looking at the application now after a few minutes on the phone. I see her application, very impressive. We get 12,000 applicants for the Park School film major at Ithaca College. I can't say she's in the top 12,000. Matter of fact, out of those 12,000, I'm sorry, scratch that, we only accept 50, and she's not amongst the top 50. 12,000 applications, 50 are accepted, and she's not one of the top 50. They sent her a denial letter. Thank you for applying. On May 3rd, I called the school back. Remember May 1st, any accepted student who didn't say yes is dropped from the acceptance list. I called them back on the 3rd. Hi, this is Bob Trace. Any chance one of those 50 students didn't say yes? There was a pause, a moment of silence, and then the admissions officer said, if I accepted Alyssa, would she still come? Absolutely. And then she got the letter. Point being, communicate with the school. If you're an accepted student, if you're a parent of an accepted student, you have the ability to call the school and tell them what's changed. You have the ability to say, what about now? They want to fill that seat. Alyssa had excellent academic numbers, but not the top 50. And they would have had to scramble to find somebody else, probably with a lot lower academic record than Alyssa, but I filled that gap. I called them at the opportune time. Alyssa was still available and she attended. My name and number is at the bottom of the screen. Don't hesitate to reach out for me, especially over the course of the next month or so when you're approaching this application or these two applications, Fafsa and CSS Profile. If you run into a problem, don't hesitate to call me. And Michael, feel free to put these slides on your website. And thank you all for attending. I hope I wrapped it up early enough.
Yes, that was great, Bob. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Presentation is always phenomenal. Our parents get a lot out of it. We are going to make it available to our parents. And like you said, if they have questions, that'd be great if they had the opportunity to call or email and clarify some questions they might have.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that we weren't able to make the connection. That way you'd be able to put my face with my voice. But we'll do that next time.
Definitely.
We'll
Thank you so much.
Guys, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yes.
You all have a good night.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you.